Number 17, fractured bones couldn't stop him. The human stood tall. Hashtag part 1, the mining station Kepler. 442b hung in the darkness of space like a metal spider, its 8 massive legs extending into the asteroid belt. Inside the central hub, 3 species worked together in what the Galactic Council called peaceful cooperation. The reality was far messier than the politicians back on their home worlds liked to admit. Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided the heavy mining drone through the narrow tunnel. The human was one of only 12 of his kind on the station, vastly outnumbered by the elegant Valorians and the insectoid Krex. At 28 years old, Marcus had spent the last 5 years working these tunnels, sending precious metals back to Earth to help fund humanity's expansion into the galaxy. The Valorians, with their pale blue skin and graceful movements, considered themselves the superior race. They had discovered faster-than-light travel 2,000 years before humans even learned to make fire. Their technology was smooth, elegant, and efficient. They looked at human machinery the same way humans might look at a stone axe, crude but functional. The Krex were different entirely. Standing 7 feet tall on 4 powerful legs, with chitinous armor covering their bodies, they were built for strength and endurance. Their 4 arms could lift objects that would require human machinery, and their compound eyes could see in spectrums humans couldn't even imagine. They had been exploring space for 500 years before humans took their first steps on the moon. Both species had agreed to work with humans only because the Galactic Council required it. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community, and their inclusion was still controversial. Many species saw them as violent, unpredictable, and far too primitive to be trusted with advanced technology. Marcus didn't care about politics. He cared about getting the job done and sending money back to his sister on Earth. She was raising 2 kids alone after her husband died in the colony wars, and every credit Marcus earned meant better food on their table. The tunnel he was working in was part of Sector 7, the deepest and most dangerous part of the mining operation. The asteroid they were hollowing out was rich in trilithium, a rare element essential for faster-than-light engines. But the deeper they went, the more unstable the rock became. Microfractures ran through the entire sector like spider webs, and everyone knew it was only a matter of time before something went wrong. Human, your productivity numbers are below acceptable levels. The voice of Supervisor Valdris crackled through Marcus's helmet comm. The Valorian's tone was cold and dismissive as always. Perhaps your species is not suited for precision work. Marcus gritted his teeth, but kept working. The Valorians never missed a chance to remind humans of their supposed inferiority. They conveniently forgot that human miners consistently worked longer shifts than any other species, often volunteering for the dangerous assignments that Valorians and Krex preferred to avoid. The mining drone sensors picked up a rich vein of trilithium about 50 meters ahead. Marcus guided it carefully through the narrow passage, the machine's cutting beam carving away tons of rock with surgical precision. This was delicate work, too aggressive, and he could destabilize the entire tunnel. Too cautious, and Valdris would write another report about human inefficiency. Behind him, Marcus could hear the steady rhythm of Krex workers using their natural strength to move the cut stone. Thak, the Krex team leader, was a decent sort who treated humans with something approaching respect. The Krex believed in the value of hard work, regardless of which species did it. Storm coming. Thak's translated voice buzzed through the comm system. The Krex's natural communication was a series of clicks and chirps that the translation software rendered into basic galactic standard. Sensors show electromagnetic activity increasing. Marcus checked his display. Thak was right. The asteroid belt was prone to electrical storms that could last for days, interfering with communications and making mining operations extremely dangerous. The smart thing to do would be to evacuate Sector 7 and wait for the storm to pass. Continue working, Valdris ordered. Productivity quotas must be met. The storm will not reach us for several hours. Marcus exchanged a look with Thak, or at least the human equivalent of a look. The Krex's compound eyes didn't convey emotion the way human eyes did, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle movements of the alien's head and antennae. Thak was worried. The Valorians were excellent engineers and had built a mining station to withstand almost anything the galaxy could throw at it. But almost anything wasn't quite the same as everything, and Marcus had seen enough industrial accidents to know that the universe didn't care how advanced your technology was. As if summoned by his thoughts, the tunnel began to vibrate. It was subtle at first, just a slight tremor that Marcus might have dismissed as heavy machinery operating somewhere else in the station. But the vibration grew stronger, and soon loose rocks were falling from the ceiling. Seismic activity detected. The station's AI announced in its calm, mechanical voice. All personnel in Sector 7 should prepare for possible evacuation. Marcus shut down the mining drone and started securing the equipment. The Kreks were already moving, their multiple arms working with incredible efficiency to gather tools and materials. But Valdris's voice cut through the increasing noise. Continue operations. This is minor seismic activity. The storm will arrive before we can complete evacuation and restart. We will lose an entire day's production. Supervisor, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice respectful. The regulations clearly state that I am aware of the regulations, human. I am also aware that your species has a tendency toward irrational fear. Continue working. Marcus looked at Thakthok again. The Krex was standing perfectly still, which Marcus had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. In Krex culture, unnecessary movement was wasteful. So when they stopped moving entirely, it meant they were using all their mental energy to process a dangerous situation. The vibrations were getting stronger. Marcus could feel them through the soles of his boots, a steady rhythm like a massive heartbeat. Somewhere deep in the asteroid, stresses that had been building for millions of years were finally finding release. Marcus made a decision that would have consequences far beyond anything he could have imagined. Instead of following Valdris's orders, he activated the emergency beacon on his suit. This is Chun in Sector 7. He broadcast on the general frequency. We have increasing seismic activity and should evacuate immediately. I'm calling for emergency withdrawal of all personnel. Negative. Valdris's voice was sharp with anger. Cancel that order. Human Chun, you are in violation of chain of command protocols. But Marcus's message had already reached the other human workers scattered throughout the sector. James Rodriguez was the first to respond, his Mexican accent thick with worry. Marcus, I'm reading major instability in Tunnel C. We need to get out of here now. Sarah Kim's voice joined the channel. Same here in Tunnel F. The rock is shifting. I can hear it groaning. One by one, the human workers reported similar conditions. The Valerian supervisors ordered them to continue working, but something had changed. For the first time since arriving at the station, the humans were putting their own safety ahead of alien orders. It was a small act of defiance, but it would prove to be the first crack in a system that had kept humanity in a subordinate position since joining the Galactic Council. The asteroid shuddered like a living thing in pain. Marcus watched his seismic readings spike into the red zone and knew they had maybe minutes before the entire sector collapsed. He grabbed Thakthok's nearest arm. We need to go. Now. The Krex looked at him for a long moment, then clicked something that the translator couldn't parse. But Marcus understood anyway. Thakthok was afraid too. They started running toward the main tunnel, their heavy boots echoing off the metal flooring. Behind them, Marcus could hear the groaning of stressed metal and rock as the asteroid began to tear itself apart. The electromagnetic storm chose that moment to arrive early, washing over the station in waves of crackling energy. The lights flickered, then went out entirely. Emergency lighting kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in red shadows that made the tunnels look like the inside of a bleeding wound. Marcus's helmet display showed 12 humans scattered throughout Sector 7, all trying to reach the main evacuation route. But the tunnels were narrow, designed for efficiency rather than quick escape, and the path to safety was nearly 2 kilometers of winding passages through increasingly unstable rock. All human personnel, this is Chun. Sound off and report your location. One by one, his colleagues responded. They were scattered across 6 different tunnels, some closer to safety than others. Rodriguez was trapped in Tunnel C with 2 Krex workers. Kim was alone in Tunnel F, her path blocked by fallen debris. 8 others were in various stages of evacuation, some making good progress, others facing serious obstacles. Valdris's voice cut through the chatter. All personnel will evacuate in an orderly fashion according to standard protocols. Human workers will wait for Valerian supervision before attempting to leave their assigned areas. To hell with that. Rodriguez's voice was tight with fear and anger. The ceiling is coming down around us. We're not waiting for anyone. It was the first time any human had openly refused a direct order from a Valerian supervisor. Under normal circumstances, it would have meant immediate termination and deportation back to Earth. But these were not normal circumstances. The tunnel shook again, more violently than before. This time, Marcus could hear the distinctive crack of metal under stress. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, support beams were beginning to fail. Marcus checked his suit's power levels and confirmed his emergency supplies. Standard protocol required each worker to carry enough air, water, and medical supplies to survive for 48 hours in case of emergency. But Marcus had learned long ago that protocols were written by people who didn't have to follow them, and he always carried extra. Listen up, he broadcast to all the humans in Sector 7. Forget the protocols. Forget the supervisors. We're getting out of here alive, and we're getting everyone out. No one gets left behind. It was a promise he would soon have reason to regret, but it was also the moment when 12 scattered humans became something more than just individual workers trying to survive. They became a team. The asteroid screamed around them as ancient stresses finally found release, and Marcus Chun began the longest run of his life. Number 17 fractured bones couldn't stop him. The human stood tall. Hashtag part 2, the first support beam, came down like thunder. Marcus felt the shock wave through his boots as tons of metal and rock crashed into Tunnel D, just 50 meters from where he and Thak were running. The emergency lights flickered again, and for a terrifying moment, they were plunged into absolute darkness before the backup systems kicked in. Tunnel D is blocked. Sarah Kim's voice crackled through the static on the comm system. I can see the collapse from here. There's no way through. Marcus checked his mental map of Sector 7. Tunnel D was the main evacuation route, the widest and most stable passage to the surface. With it blocked, they would have to use the smaller maintenance tunnels, which meant single-file movement and much slower progress. More importantly, it meant Rodriguez and his 2 Krex companions were now trapped on the wrong side of the collapse. Rodriguez, what's your status? Marcus called. Alive for now. The Mexican's voice was strained, but steady. But we've got problems here. The tunnel ceiling is sagging, and I can hear water. Looks like the collapse ruptured a coolant line. Water in the tunnels was bad news. The mining station used liquid nitrogen to cool the cutting equipment, and exposure to the supercooled fluid would kill any organic being in minutes. Even worse, if it mixed with the electrical systems, it could trigger an explosion that would take out half the sector. Can you reach the emergency airlock in Tunnel C? Marcus asked. Negative. The way is blocked by debris. But there's a maintenance shaft about 20 meters ahead. If we can get through that, we might be able to reach Tunnel B. Marcus knew the maintenance shaft Rodriguez was talking about. It was barely wide enough for a human, and would be impossible for a Krex to navigate. The aliens' 4 arms and armored carapaces made them incredibly strong, but also bulky. James, the Krex won't fit through that shaft. I know. Rodriguez's voice was grim. I'm working on another option. While Marcus was talking to Rodriguez, Thak had been communicating with the other Krex workers through their own frequency. The rapid clicking and chirping sounded like machine gun fire to human ears, but Marcus had learned to recognize certain emotional tones. This conversation sounded urgent and angry. What are they saying? Marcus asked. Thak's translated response came through clearly. Krex Command orders all Krex workers to abandon human personnel and evacuate through Tunnel. Krex workers are too valuable to risk in human rescue attempts. Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest. Tunnel A was on the opposite side of the sector from where most of the humans were trapped. The Krex could reach it easily, but it would mean abandoning 8 humans who were still trying to navigate the collapsing tunnels. And what do you think about those orders? Marcus asked. Thak stopped running for a moment and turned his massive head to look at Marcus. The alien's compound eyes reflected the red emergency lighting like scattered jewels. When he spoke, his translated voice carried an emotion that Marcus had never heard from a Krex before. Orders are sometimes wrong. Friends are more important than orders. It was the first time any Krex had referred to a human as a friend. They resumed running, but now they were moving against the flow of traffic. Other Krex workers were heading toward Tunnel A, following their orders to evacuate quickly and safely. A few Valerian supervisors passed them, their pale blue forms moving with characteristic grace even in crisis. None of them offered to help. Marcus's helmet display showed the locations of the remaining humans. Kim was still trying to clear debris from her path. Rodriguez was attempting something risky with his Krex companions. The other 8 were spread across 3 different tunnels, some making progress, others stalled by obstacles or mechanical failures. Chun, this is Supervisor Valdris. The Valorian's voice cut through the static with its usual cold authority. You are ordered to evacuate immediately via Tunnel A. All rescue operations are to be handled by qualified Valerie emergency personnel. Where are these qualified personnel? Marcus asked, because I don't see any of them down here. They're en route from the upper levels. You will wait for their arrival and follow their instructions. Marcus looked around at the red-lit tunnel, listening to the groans of stressed metal and the distant rumble of continuing collapses. How long until they arrive? Estimated time is 47 minutes. In 47 minutes, half my people will be dead. That is not your concern. You are a mining technician, not emergency response personnel. Marcus made his second major decision of the day. I am staying. The silence on the comm was profound. In the 5 years since humans had joined the Galactic Council, no human had ever directly refused a Valerian evacuation order during an emergency. It was the kind of insubordination that would end not just Marcus's career, but possibly his citizenship in galactic civilization. You are in direct violation of Galactic Emergency Protocol 47, Valdris said finally. You will be arrested upon evacuation. If I live long enough to be arrested, I'll count that as a victory. Marcus switched to the human frequency. All human personnel, this is Chun. Official policy is to wait for Valerian rescue teams. Unofficial policy is that we get ourselves out. Anyone who wants to follow official policy, head for Tunnel A. Anyone who wants to come home alive, stay on this frequency, and we'll coordinate our own rescue. One by one, his colleagues responded. Not a single human chose to abandon their trapped friends. Kim was the first to make real progress. Using a combination of determination and complete disregard for safety protocols, she managed to clear enough debris to squeeze through a partially collapsed section of Tunnel F. She emerged battered and covered in dust but mobile. I'm clear of the worst damage, she reported. Moving toward the intersection with Tunnel E. I can see Thompson and Gupta from here. Thompson and Gupta were 2 of the younger human workers, both on their first tour away from Earth. Thompson was barely 19, working to pay for his sister's medical treatments. Gupta was 22, sending money back to help his family recover from the flooding that had devastated Mumbai the previous year. Thompson's hurt, Kim continued. Looks like his left arm is broken, and he's having trouble with his oxygen recycler. A broken arm and oxygen problems in a collapsing tunnel system was a death sentence under normal circumstances. But Marcus was beginning to realize that these weren't normal circumstances, and humans weren't normal people. Can you reach them? Marcus asked. Working on it. Give me 5 minutes. While Kim worked to reach the injured humans, Marcus and Thakthok had arrived at the collapse that blocked Tunnel D. The damage was worse than Marcus had expected. 30 meters of tunnel had been completely filled with debris, creating a solid wall of twisted metal and broken rock that rose from floor to ceiling. Marcus activated his suit's scanning equipment and began looking for weak points or alternate routes. The readings were not encouraging. The collapse was too complete and too deep to dig through quickly, and the surrounding rock was so unstable that any attempt to clear might trigger an even larger collapse. But the scanner also showed something else. A small gap near the ceiling where a support beam had fallen at an angle, creating a tiny pocket of space behind the debris. It was less than a meter wide, and maybe half that in height, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. I think I can get through, Marcus told Thakthok. The Krex examined the gap with his compound eyes, seeing details that human vision couldn't detect. Space is too small. Risk of additional collapse is 94%. What about risk if I don't try? Rodriguez and Krex workers die. Probability 100%. Marcus began stripping off his equipment harness, keeping only his helmet, oxygen supply, and emergency medical kit. Every ounce of weight mattered when trying to squeeze through a gap that was barely wide enough for his body. Marcus, don't be stupid. Kim's voice carried a note of desperation. If you get stuck in there, we lose you, and we still can't help Rodriguez. If I don't try, we lose Rodriguez and his friends for sure. Marcus squeezed into the gap, feeling the rough edges of broken metal scrape against his environmental suit. The space was even tighter than it had looked from the outside, and he had to exhale completely to fit through the narrowest section. Behind him, he could hear Thak talking to the other Kreks in their rapid, clicking language. Even without translation, Marcus could tell the alien was agitated. Krek's physiology simply wasn't built for tight spaces, and the idea of crawling through a gap like this probably seemed insane to their logical minds. The gap extended for nearly 10 meters, forcing Marcus to army crawl through a space that seemed to grow smaller with each meter. Loose debris rained down around him, and twice he had to stop and wait for the tunnel to stop shaking before continuing. Finally, he emerged on the other side, covered in rock dust and bleeding from a dozen small cuts where metal edges had found gaps in his suit. But he was through. Rodriguez, where are you? About 50 meters down from the collapse. And, Marcus, we've got a real problem here. Marcus found them in a wider section of the tunnel where Rodriguez had set up a makeshift shelter using salvaged equipment covers. The two Krek workers, Dektor and Zigmal, were huddled together in what Marcus recognized as a defensive posture. Between them lay Rodriguez, and Marcus could immediately see why his friend had sounded so worried. The Mexican's left leg was bent at an unnatural angle, obviously broken. But worse than that, his environmental suit had been punctured in several places by falling debris. He was losing atmosphere, and his oxygen reserves were dropping fast. How long do you have? Marcus asked. Maybe 20 minutes if I don't move much. 5 minutes if I try to crawl anywhere. Marcus examined the Krek workers. Both appeared uninjured, but they were clearly distressed. Their usual efficient movements had become agitated and jerky, and they were making low clicking sounds that the translator wasn't picking up. They're scared, Rodriguez explained. Not for themselves, for me. Apparently, Kreks have very strong feelings about abandoning injured teammates. Marcus began unpacking his emergency medical supplies. The kit contained temporary patches for environmental suits, basic surgical tools, and enough painkiller to keep someone functional for several hours. It was designed to keep a person alive until professional medical help arrived, not to provide a permanent solution to serious injuries. But it would have to be enough. This is going to hurt, Marcus warned as he began cleaning the wounds on Rodriguez's leg. Already hurts. Just do what you have to do. As Marcus worked, Rodriguez explained their situation. The collapse had blocked their primary escape route, and the maintenance shaft was too small for the Krek workers. But Dektor had found another possibility, an old chute that connected to the upper levels. The chute was steep and dangerous, but it was wide enough for Kreks, and it bypassed most of the unstable areas. The problem is getting up there, Rodriguez continued. The access ladder is broken, and it's a 15-meter climb up a vertical shaft. Marcus looked at the Krek workers, both of whom were perfectly capable of climbing a 15-meter shaft with their forearms. What about you? With this leg, I'm not climbing anywhere. I was thinking maybe they could carry me, but what? Rodriguez lowered his voice, even though the Kreks probably couldn't understand him without the translator. I think I'm too heavy. Kreks are strong, but they're not built for carrying dead weight while climbing. If one of them falls trying to carry me, we all die. Marcus finished patching Rodriguez's suit and moved on to setting his broken leg. It was ugly work made worse by the limited tools available, but Rodriguez gritted his teeth and endured it without complaint. While Marcus worked, his comm crackled with updates from the other human workers. Kim had successfully reached Thompson and Gupta and was working to repair Thompson's oxygen system. 3 more humans had made it to relative safety. 2 others were still trapped, but making progress. But time was running out. The electromagnetic storm was intensifying, interfering with communications, and causing power fluctuations throughout the station. Worse, the seismic activity was increasing. Each tremor brought more debris down, and The support structures were beginning to fail in cascade patterns. "We need to move soon," Marcus told Rodriguez. "This whole section is going to come down in the next hour or two." "I know, and I've been thinking about the climbing problem." And Rodriguez smiled, but it was the kind of smile that people wore when they were about to do something incredibly stupid. "What if the Creks don't have to carry me? What if I can climb by myself?" Marcus looked at his friend's shattered leg, then at the medical readings on his helmet display. Rodriguez was running on adrenaline and painkillers, but his body was already starting to go into shock from the injuries. "James, you can barely sit up. How are you going to climb 15 meters? "Very carefully, and with a lot of help from my friends." Rodriguez explained his plan. It was insane, dangerous, and had about a dozen ways to kill all of them. It also might be their only chance. Marcus looked at the two Creks workers who had been following the conversation through their translators. "What do you think?" Dector clicked something that came through as probability of success low. "Probability of success if we remain here 0. We attempt climb." Sometimes Marcus thought the only choice was between bad options and worse options. He began gathering the equipment they would need for the most dangerous climb of their lives. Number 17 fractured bones couldn't stop him. The human stood tall, hashtag part 3 the or shoot rose above them like a chimney carved from metal and stone. Marcus aimed his helmet light upward and could barely make out the access hatch 15 meters above, their only way to safety. Rodriguez sat against the wall of the tunnel, his face pale but determined. Marcus had done what he could with the medical supplies, but there was no hiding the fact that his friend was badly injured. The temporary splint on Rodriguez's leg would hold for a while, but every movement sent waves of pain through his body. "Okay, let's go through this one more time," Marcus said. He had improvised a climbing harness from cargo straps and safety cables, creating a system that would distribute Rodriguez's weight between himself and the two Creks workers. Dector would climb first, carrying one end of the safety line. Marcus would follow with Rodriguez secured to his back in a makeshift carrier. Zigmal would climb last, serving as anchor and backup in case anything went wrong. It was a plan that asked each of them to perform beyond their normal capabilities, and it relied on equipment that was never designed for this kind of use. But it was all they had. "Remember," Marcus said to Rodriguez, "if the pain gets too bad, or if you start losing consciousness, you signal immediately. I can't feel what you feel, so I need you to communicate." "I'll be fine," Rodriguez lied with practiced ease. Marcus checked his helmet comm one last time before they started climbing. Kim was making good progress with Thompson and Gupta, though Thompson's injuries were worse than initially thought. The other human teams were scattered throughout the sector, some close to safety, others still fighting their way through blocked passages. Supervisor Valderis had stopped calling for the last 20 minutes, which Marcus took as a bad sign. Either the Valerian rescue teams were finally on their way, or the situation had deteriorated to the point where evacuation was no longer possible. "All teams, this is Chun. We're attempting to reach the upper levels through or chute 7. If we make it, we'll try to establish an alternate evacuation route." "Copy that, Marcus," Kim responded. "We're about 10 minutes behind you." Thompson is walking, but slowly. Dector began climbing first, his 4 powerful arms making easy work of the rough walls of the chute. Creks were natural climbers, and their chitinous armor provided excellent grip on the metal and stone surfaces. Within minutes, he had reached the top and secured the safety line. Marcus hoisted Rodriguez onto his back, feeling the added weight immediately. His friend was not a large man, but the combination of Rodriguez's body weight, the climbing gear, and the medical supplies pushed Marcus close to his physical limits before he even started climbing. "Ready?" Marcus asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rodriguez replied. "Just promise me something. If I pass out up there, don't stop. Get yourself and the Creks to safety. We're all getting out, James. No one gets left behind." Marcus began climbing. The first few meters were the hardest. His muscles had to adjust to the additional weight, and he had to learn how to balance Rodriguez's shifting body as they moved up the chute. The safety line helped, but it could only do so much if Marcus lost his grip or made a wrong move. Rodriguez tried to help by using his good leg to brace against the walls when possible, but his injured leg was completely useless. Every few meters, Marcus could feel his friend's body tense with pain, but Rodriguez never complained or asked him to stop. Halfway up the chute, disaster struck. Marcus was reaching for a handhold when a section of the wall gave way under his grip. Loose rock and metal showered down as he scrambled for a new hold, his boots slipping on the debris. For a terrifying moment, he hung by one hand while Rodriguez's weight threatened to pull both of them into the darkness below. The safety line snapped taut, jerking both humans hard against the chute wall. Marcus felt something pop in his shoulder, and Rodriguez gasped in pain as the sudden stop jarred his broken leg. But the line held, and Dektor's anchor point above them proved solid. Status report, Dektor called down, his translated voice tight with concern. We're okay, Marcus called back, though he was far from sure about that. His shoulder was already stiffening up, and he could feel warm blood running down his arm where the wall had scraped him. Rodriguez was breathing heavily, and Marcus could hear the strain in his friend's voice when he spoke. Keep going, Rodriguez whispered. I'm still with you. The last 5 meters of the climb were a nightmare of pain and determination. Marcus's injured shoulder screamed with every movement, and his legs were beginning to shake with exhaustion. Rodriguez had grown quiet, which worried Marcus more than any complaint would have. But finally, Marcus felt Dektor's strong arms reach down to help pull him up to the access hatch. They collapsed together on the platform, both humans gasping for air and shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. The ore chute had brought them to sublevel 3, one level below the main station operations. From here, they could access the primary evacuation routes that led to the shuttle base. More importantly, they were out of the most unstable sections of Sector 7. How's Rodriguez? Zigmal asked as he finished his own climb up the chute. Marcus checked his friend's vital signs on his helmet display. Rodriguez was conscious but weak, his blood pressure dropping and his body temperature beginning to fluctuate, classic signs of shock setting in. They had maybe an hour before his condition became critical. He needs medical attention, Marcus said. Real medical attention, not field patches. The good news was that Sublevel 3 had full communications access. Marcus was able to contact the station's medical bay directly, rather than going through the chain of command that had been so unhelpful during the evacuation. Medical bay, this is Chun from Sector 7. I have an injured human worker who needs immediate evacuation. Chun, the voice belonged to Dr. Yala, one of the Valerian medical staff. You are supposed to be evacuated from Sector 7. What is your current location? Sublevel 3, or Chute Access 7. We climbed out through the mining tunnels. There was a long pause before Dr. Yala responded. That is impossible. No organic being could climb 15 meters carrying an injured colleague. Well, we did it anyway. Can you send a medical team? Stand by. While they waited for medical support, Marcus contacted the other human teams still trapped in Sector 7. The news was mixed. Kim had successfully evacuated her group and was helping 3 other humans navigate collapsed sections. 2 more teams had found alternate routes to safety. But humans were still trapped in the deepest sections of the sector, and their situations were getting worse by the minute. Water from ruptured coolant lines was beginning to flood some tunnels, and the electrical systems were becoming increasingly unstable. Marcus, this is Patterson. The voice belonged to one of the senior human workers, a woman who had been mining asteroids longer than anyone else on the station. We're trapped in Tunnel J, and the water level is rising fast. We've maybe got 20 minutes before this place floods completely. Marcus looked at his injured friend, then at the 2 Crex workers who had risked their lives to help save a human they barely knew. Every logical part of his brain said he had done enough, that he should wait for proper rescue teams and medical support. But the logical parts of his brain had never been very loud. Patterson, what's your exact location? What are you thinking, Marcus? Rodriguez asked weakly. You can barely stand up. I'm thinking that we didn't come this far to lose 4 more people. Dr. Yala's voice crackled through the comm system. Medical team is en route to your location. Estimated arrival time is 12 minutes. Copy that. Rodriguez, you're staying here with the medical team. Dektor, Zigmal, I need to ask you something that's probably crazy. The 2 Crex workers looked at each other, their compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting of Sublevel 3. They had already gone far beyond what their orders required, already risked their lives for humans who weren't even their species. Request assistance? Dector asked. I need to go back down and get Patterson's team. The route they're trapped in connects to the or-shoot system about 2 levels down. If I can reach them, I might be able to guide them to safety. Probability of success? Marcus looked at his helmet display, reviewing the structural data for the lower levels of Sector 7. The readings were not encouraging. Several more support beams had failed in the last hour, and the seismic activity was increasing. Maybe 30%, Marcus admitted. Probability of Patterson team survival without assistance. 0%. Zigmal clicked something that the translator rendered as acceptable odds. We provide assistance. It was the moment when Marcus realized that courage wasn't just a human trait. These alien beings, with their logical minds and efficient culture, were willing to risk their lives for people they had barely known a few hours ago. The medical team arrived as promised, 3 Valerian technicians with advanced equipment and dismissive attitudes. They were clearly surprised to find the humans alive and conscious, and even more surprised to learn about the improvised climbing equipment that had made the rescue possible. Dr. Yala examined Rodriguez with professional efficiency, her pale blue fingers dancing over medical scanners that provided detailed readings of his condition. Compound fracture of the left tibia and fibula, 3 cracked ribs, mild concussion, and significant blood loss, she announced. This human should have been unconscious hours ago. Human pain tolerance is higher than your medical databases indicate, Marcus said. Is he going to be okay? With proper treatment, full recovery is likely. But I'm curious about your climbing technique. Our calculations suggest that carrying this much weight up a 15-meter vertical shaft should be beyond human physical capabilities. Marcus was too tired to explain that calculations didn't account for desperation, friendship, or the simple human refusal to accept impossible odds. Instead, he just shrugged. We managed. Rodriguez grabbed Marcus's arm as the medical team prepared to move him to the station's infirmary. Marcus, don't do anything stupid down there. Define stupid. You know what I mean. You've already proven whatever point you were trying to make. You don't have to save everyone. Marcus looked at his friend, really looked at him. Rodriguez was pale and weak, but his eyes were clear and determined. Even injured and in pain, he was worried about Marcus's safety more than his own condition. That was when Marcus realized what this whole situation had really been about. It wasn't about proving human superiority or defying alien authority. It was about something much simpler and much more important. It was about not leaving people behind. I'll be careful, Marcus promised. And I'll be back. As the medical team carried Rodriguez toward the elevator, Marcus began preparing for his second descent into the collapsing mining tunnels. His shoulder ached, his legs were shaking with exhaustion, and his environmental suit was held together with patches and prayers. But somewhere below, for humans were running out of time, and that was all that mattered. Dector and Zigmal flanked him as they approached the chute, their alien faces impossible to read, but their body language speaking clearly of determination and resolve. Ready? Marcus asked. Ready? They replied in unison. Together, they began their descent into hell. Number 17 fractured bones couldn't stop him. The human stood tall. Hashtag part 4. The descent into the flooded tunnels was like diving into an alien nightmare. Marcus rappelled down the chute while Dector and Zigmal used their natural climbing abilities to navigate the slippery walls. The water level had risen dramatically since their escape, and now dark liquid sloshed around their ankles as they reached the bottom. Patterson, this is Chun. We're in the lower access tunnels. What's your status? Marcus, thank God. Patterson's voice was strained with relief and fear. The water is up to our waist now, and it's still rising. We've moved to the highest point we can find, but it's not going to be enough. Marcus checked his suit's environmental readings. The liquid wasn't just water. It was a mixture of coolant, hydraulic fluid, and condensation from the station's atmosphere recycling system. It was toxic, corrosive, and getting deeper by the minute. How many are with you? 4 total. Me, Davidson, Chunwoo, and Okafor. Davidson hurt his back when the tunnel shifted, but he's mobile. The rest of us are okay for now. Marcus looked at his helmet display, trying to map the best route to Patterson's location. The direct path was completely flooded, but there was a maintenance conduit that might still be passable. It would mean crawling through a space barely wide enough for a person, while water continued to rise around them. "We're coming to get you," Marcus said. "But we'll need to move fast." Dektor and Zigmal had been examining the flooded tunnel with their advanced senses. Krex could see in multiple spectrums and detect structural stress that would be invisible to human eyes. What they found was not encouraging. "Multiple support failures detected," Dektor reported. "Tunnel collapse probability increasing rapidly. Estimate 15 minutes before complete structural failure. 15 minutes to reach 4 trapped humans, guide them through flooded and unstable tunnels, and get everyone to safety." Marcus had attempted easier tasks that had taken hours, but he had also learned something important about human capability in the last few hours. When a situation was impossible, humans didn't give up. They redefined what was possible. "Zigmal, I need you to stay here and maintain communications with the surface. If this tunnel collapses, someone needs to know what happened down here." "Dektor, you're with me." The correct worker's compound eyes fixed on Marcus. "Human Marcus, your physical condition is degraded. Injury to shoulder joint reduces climbing efficiency by approximately 40%. Recommended course is to wait for Valerian rescue teams." "How long until they arrive?" "Estimated 37 minutes. Marcus looked at the rising water, then at the structural stress readings on his display. "In 37 minutes, Patterson's team will be dead, and probably us too." "Correct. Then we don't wait." Marcus and Dektor began making their way through the flooded tunnel toward the maintenance conduit. The toxic liquid was now above their knees and rising steadily. Each step stirred up clouds of sediment that made visibility even worse than the emergency lighting conditions would suggest. The maintenance conduit was a circular tube about 1 meter in diameter, originally designed for small repair robots. Marcus had to crawl on his hands and knees with Dektor following behind. The Krex's 4 arms actually made him more efficient in the confined space, but his larger body meant he barely fit through the opening. Halfway through the conduit, Marcus's helmet comm crackled with Patterson's voice. "Marcus, the water level just jumped. We're looking at maybe 5 minutes before we lose our air pocket." "Copy that. We're almost there." Marcus pushed himself harder, ignoring the pain in his shoulder and the growing exhaustion in his legs. Behind him, he could hear Dektor's breathing apparatus working harder as the alien pushed himself beyond normal Krex performance parameters. They emerged from the conduit into a partially collapsed chamber where 4 humans had taken refuge on a pile of debris that rose about 2 meters above the current water level. Patterson was a tall, athletic woman in her 40s who had been working in space longer than Marcus had been alive. Davidson was holding his back, but standing upright. Chun Wu and Okafor looked frightened but determined. "Okay, people," Marcus announced as he climbed out of the water. "We're leaving. Right now." "How?" Chun Wu asked. "The tunnel we came through is completely flooded." Marcus pointed to the maintenance conduit. "Same way we got here. It's tight, it's wet, and it's dangerous. But it's the only way out." Davidson looked skeptical. "Marcus, I don't think I can crawl through a space that small. My back is pretty messed up." "Then, we'll help you. Patterson, you go first. You're the most experienced, and we'll need someone to guide the others from the front. Davidson, you'll go second. Chun Wu and Okafor behind him, then me, then Dektor brings up the rear." "What if Davidson gets stuck?" Okafor asked. Marcus had been wondering the same thing. The conduit was barely large enough for a healthy person, and Davidson's back injury would make the tight crawling movement extremely painful. If he became trapped partway through, everyone behind him would be stuck. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Marcus said. "Right now, staying here means drowning. Moving means we have a chance." Patterson nodded and slipped into the water. She was an experienced void worker who had survived situations that would have killed most people, and she approached the maintenance conduit with professional calm. Within seconds, she had disappeared into the dark tube. Davidson was next. Marcus could see the pain on the man's face as he lowered himself into the water, but Davidson had worked in space for 12 years and understood that sometimes survival required enduring things that seemed impossible. "Take your time," Marcus told him, "but keep moving. The water is still rising." One by one, the trapped humans entered the conduit. Marcus waited until all 4 were inside before following, with Deck Tour taking the most dangerous position at the rear. The journey back through the flooded conduit was a nightmare of tight spaces, rising water, and growing desperation. Davidson moved slowly but steadily, his injured back forcing him to rest every few meters. Chunwoo and Okafor were both young and relatively inexperienced, but they pushed forward with the determination that Marcus was learning was a fundamental human trait. Halfway through, the tunnel shuddered with another collapse. Marcus felt the vibration through the walls of the conduit, and for a terrifying moment, he thought the entire structure was coming down around them. Debris rained down from somewhere above, and the water level rose noticeably. "Everyone okay?" Marcus called. One by one, his teammates reported in. Patterson was making good progress toward the exit. Davidson was still moving despite obvious pain. Chunwoo and Okafor were frightened but functional. Dektor's response came last. Conduit showing stress fractures. Estimate 3 minutes before structural failure. 3 minutes to get 5 humans, and one corrects through 50 meters of collapsing maintenance tunnel. Marcus did the math in his head and didn't like the answer. "Everyone move faster," he called. "We're running out of time." But even as he spoke, Marcus could hear Davidson struggling ahead of him. The man's breathing was labored, and he had slowed to barely a crawl. His back injury was getting worse, and the stress position required for moving through the conduit was making it nearly impossible for him to continue. "Davidson, talk to me," Marcus called. "I'm slowing you down," Davidson replied, his voice tight with pain and frustration. Maybe you should go around me." "There is no going around. We all get out, or none of us get out." "Marcus, be practical. For people have a chance if they leave me here. 5 people all die if they wait for me." It was logical, rational, and completely unacceptable to Marcus. During his years working in space, he had seen too many situations where the practical choice meant abandoning someone who could still be saved. He had sworn never to be part of that kind of decision. "Davidson, listen to me very carefully. I climbed 15 meters up a vertical shaft with Rodriguez on my back. I rappelled into a flooding tunnel to come get you. You think I'm going to quit now because you're moving slowly?" "Marcus, no discussion. We're all getting out. Dektor, can you give us a structural update? Conduit failure imminent. Estimate 90 seconds before complete collapse." 90 seconds. Marcus looked ahead at the slow-moving line of humans, calculating distances and time remaining. Even if Davidson could move faster, they probably wouldn't all make it to the exit before the conduit came down. But Marcus had one more idea, and it was completely insane. "Everyone stop moving," he called. "I'm coming forward." Marcus began pushing past his teammates in the narrow conduit, a process that required careful coordination and several uncomfortable moments of trying to squeeze around people in a space barely large enough for one person. But finally, he reached Davidson's position. "What are you doing?" Davidson asked. "Something stupid that might work," Marcus replied. He activated his suit's emergency beacon and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Chun in Sector 7 Maintenance Conduit. I have 5 humans and 1 Krex trapped in a collapsing tunnel. We need immediate extraction assistance." "Marcus, there's no one close enough to help." Patterson's voice came from ahead of them. "Maybe, but I've learned something about impossible situations today." Marcus's beacon was picked up by the station's emergency network and automatically relayed to all rescue teams. Within seconds, responses began coming in from across the station. "Chun, this is Valerian Emergency Team 7. We are 23 minutes from your location." "Chun, this is Human Maintenance Team Delta. We're in Sublevel 2, but the access routes are blocked." "Chun, this is Krex Engineering Squad. We are an adjacent tunnel system, but no direct access to your location." None of them were close enough to help in time. But then another voice joined the conversation. "Marcus, this is Kim. Where exactly are you?" Marcus checked his location on his helmet display and relayed the coordinates. Sarah Kim had successfully evacuated her group and was somewhere in the upper levels of Sector 7. "I can see the maintenance conduit access from here," Kim reported. "It's partially flooded, but I think I can reach it." "What do you need?" "Emergency extraction equipment. Ropes, pulleys, anything that can help us move faster. Give me 5 minutes." Marcus didn't know if they had 5 minutes. The conduit was shaking continuously now, and he could hear the ominous groaning of metal under stress. But Kim had been reliable all day, and if anyone could improvise a solution, it was her. Dector, status report, 60 seconds to failure. Recommend immediate evacuation by any means necessary. Marcus made his final decision of the day. Everyone link up. We're going to move as a unit. Patterson, when Kim gets the extraction line in place, you grab it and don't let go. The rest of us stay connected and follow. They linked themselves together with safety cables, creating a human chain that stretched through the conduit. It was awkward and difficult to coordinate, but it meant that no one could be left behind. 30 seconds later, Kim's voice crackled through the comm system. Line is in place. Patterson, can you see it? I see it. Moving now. What happened next will be talked about in mining stations across the galaxy for years to come. 5 humans and 1 Krex, linked together by safety cables and determination, pulled themselves through a collapsing maintenance conduit while toxic water rose around them and the tunnel structure disintegrated above their heads. Davidson, despite his injured back, found reserves of strength he didn't know he had. Chunwoo and Okafor, barely out of training programs, performed like veteran space workers. Patterson used her years of experience to guide them through obstacles that would have stopped a less skilled worker. Dector, bringing up the rear, used his 4 arms to push debris out of their path while maintaining precise countdown updates on the tunnel's structural integrity. And Marcus, in the middle of the human chain, coordinated their movements while ignoring the fact that his injured shoulder was now completely useless and his environmental suit was failing in multiple places. They emerged from the conduit with less than 10 seconds to spare. The tunnel collapsed behind them in a cascade of metal and stone that sounded like the end of the world. 5 humans and 1 Krex lay gasping in the shallow water of the access chamber, alive against all reasonable expectations. Status report. Marcus gasped as he checked his teammates for injuries. Alive, Patterson reported. Alive, Davidson confirmed. Alive, Chunwoo and Okafor said together. All humans accounted for and functional, Dector added in his translated voice. Kim helped pull them out of the water and up to the safety of sublevel 2. As they climbed, Marcus realized that something had changed during their desperate escape from the flooded tunnels. The humans were no longer just following orders or working as individuals trying to survive. They were functioning as a team that included their Krex ally, making decisions based on shared trust rather than species hierarchy. It was a small change, but it would have consequences that none of them could imagine. Number 17 fractured bones couldn't stop him. The human stood tall, hashtag part 5 6 months later. Marcus Chin stood in the main conference room of Mining Station Kepler, 442b, looking out at an assembly that would have been impossible to imagine during those desperate hours in Sector 7. Representatives from 12 species sat around the curved table, but the humans were no longer relegated to the back rows or observer status. They were equals. Marcus's left shoulder still ached on cold days, a permanent reminder of his climb up the Earth chute. The 17 fractures he had sustained during the Sector 7 incident had healed, but they had left their mark. The medical reports had become something of a legend among the station's workers, both human and alien. Dr. Yala had been forced to revise her species' entire database on human physiology after examining the survivors. The Valorians had always prided themselves on their scientific precision, but Marcus's group had performed feats that their calculations said were impossible. The productivity reports from the new Sector 12 operations exceed all projections, Supervisor Valdris was saying. The Valorian's tone was still formal and cold, but Marcus noticed that she no longer dismissed human contributions out of hand. The combined human Krex teams have increased efficiency by 43% over single-species crews. Marcus smiled at that. The combined teams had been his suggestion proposed during the investigation that followed the Sector 7 incident. Instead of segregating the species into separate work groups, the new system paired humans with Krex workers, taking advantage of their complementary abilities. The humans brought creativity, flexibility, and what the official reports diplomatically called enhanced stress response capabilities. The Krex contributed their natural strength, multi-spectrum vision, and logical problem-solving approach. What the reports didn't mention was the friendship that had developed between the species. Marcus had seen Crek's workers teaching human children traditional climbing techniques during family visits. He had watched human engineers helping Crek's families modify their quarters for better comfort. Dektor and Zigmal had become permanent fixtures at human social gatherings, their clicking communication adding a rhythmic counterpoint to human conversations. The translation software had been updated with new emotional context after linguists realized that Creks had been expressing complex feelings that the original programming couldn't recognize. Mr. Chun, the station commander said, pulling Marcus's attention back to the meeting. Commander Trell was a Valerian who had replaced the previous administrator after the investigation. Unlike his predecessor, Trell had actually read the incident reports and understood their implications. Yes, sir. Your proposal for the new emergency response protocols has been approved by the Galactic Council. Implementation will begin next month across all mining operations in this sector. Marcus nodded, but he felt mixed emotions about the recognition. The new protocols were based on lessons learned during the Sector 7 disaster, protocols that emphasized multi-species cooperation, individual initiative, and the principle that no worker should be abandoned during an emergency. They were good policies that would save lives. But Marcus would have preferred to learn those lessons in a less traumatic way. There's one more item on today's agenda, Commander Trell continued. The Galactic Council has requested a detailed report on human performance during crisis situations. They're particularly interested in the psychological factors that enabled the Sector 7 survivors to exceed their predicted physical limitations. Marcus exchanged glances with Patterson, who was now the senior human representative on the Station Council. During the months following the incident, various alien psychologists and xenobiologists had interviewed all the human survivors, trying to understand how they had managed to do what they did. The scientists had focused on adrenaline responses, pain tolerance, and stress-induced strength enhancement. They had measured hormone levels and analyzed muscle fiber composition. They had created detailed computer models of human physiology under extreme conditions. They had missed the most important factor entirely. Sir, Marcus said, I think the Council is asking the wrong question. Explain. They want to know how humans performed beyond their physical limitations. But we didn't. We performed exactly within our actual capabilities. The limitations were in their understanding of what humans can do when it matters. Commander Trell's pale blue features showed the subtle expression that Valorians use to indicate confusion. The medical data clearly shows that you exceeded normal human performance parameters. Normal parameters under normal conditions, Marcus corrected. But those weren't normal conditions. When people you care about are in danger, humans don't operate under normal parameters. It was true, though Marcus knew it sounded impossibly simplistic to species that approached everything through logical analysis. The Valorians and Creks had sophisticated emergency protocols based on careful risk assessment and resource allocation. They made rational decisions designed to minimize casualties and preserve valuable personnel. Humans, Marcus had learned, were not rational in emergencies. They were something much more dangerous and much more effective. They were stubborn. Rodriguez had returned to work after 3 months of medical leave, walking with only a slight limp to show for his injuries. He had been offered a transfer to safer duties, but he had chosen to stay in the mining operations. When Marcus asked him why, Rodriguez had shrugged. These tunnels try to kill me. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of scaring me off. That was a very human attitude, and it worried the alien administrators who were accustomed to more logical decision-making processes. Davidson had also returned to full duty, though he now served as a trainer for new workers rather than doing the heavy physical labor that had injured his back. His first lesson for every new class was simple. Look out for your teammates, because they're looking out for you. Chunwoo and Okafor had requested permanent assignment to Kepler 442b rather than rotating back to Earth as originally planned. When the station administrator asked why, they had explained that they felt they owed something to the friends who had risked their lives to save them. Again, it was an attitude that the alien bureaucrats found difficult to understand. Logical analysis suggested that Chunwoo and Okafor should be eager to leave the station where they had nearly died. Instead, they had chosen to stay and help build something better. Mr. Chun, Commander Trell said, the Council has also requested that you consider accepting a position as Director of Emergency Operations for the entire Kepler sector. It would be a significant promotion and would involve coordinating emergency response across 15 different mining operations. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. It was the kind of position that humans had never been offered before. Real authority, real responsibility, and the chance to implement the lessons they had learned during those desperate hours in Sector 7. But it would also mean leaving Kepler, 442b, and the team that had become his extended family. "Can I ask for modifications to the position?" Marcus said. "What kind of modifications?" "I want Dector as my assistant director. I want Patterson as head of training operations. I want the authority to recruit emergency response teams from all species, not just Valorians." Commander Trell's expression shifted to what Marcus had learned was surprise. "You're requesting alien personnel for your staff?" "I'm requesting the best personnel, regardless of species. Dector understands structural engineering better than any Valorian I've met. Patterson has more practical emergency experience than most Galactic Council officials. If I'm going to be responsible for keeping people alive, I want to work with people I trust." It was another moment when Marcus realized how much had changed since the Sector 7 incident. 6 months ago, a human requesting alien staff members would have been considered presumptuous at best. Now, Commander Trell was actually considering it. "I'll forward your requirements to the Council," Trell said finally. "Though I should warn you that they may find your approach unconventional." Marcus smiled. "Commander, humans are unconventional. It's one of our better qualities." After the meeting, Marcus walked through the station's main corridors, observing the changes that had taken place over the past months. Human and Krex workers moved together in mixed teams, their different physiologies complementing each other perfectly. Valorian supervisors consulted with human foremen instead of simply issuing orders. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still misunderstandings, still bureaucrats who preferred the old ways of doing things. But it was better. It was progress. Marcus stopped at the memorial wall in Sector 7, where a simple plaque commemorated the incident that had changed everything. The inscription was written in 3 languages: Human Standard, Valorian Script, and Krex Harmonic Notation, in memory of those who risk everything to ensure that no one is left behind. It wasn't eloquent, but it captured something important about what had happened in those flooded tunnels. Not the technical details of the rescue, not the impressive performance statistics, but the simple human principle that had driven everything else. "Reading your own press again?" Rodriguez's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to see his friend approaching, walking easily despite the slight limp that remained from his injuries. Rodriguez had adapted to his limitations with the same stubbornness that had gotten him through the collapsed tunnel. "Just thinking," Marcus said, "about how things have changed." "You mean how humans went from being the new kids everyone ignored to being the species everyone wants on their emergency response team?" "Something like that." Rodriguez joined him in looking at the memorial plaque. "You know what I think the real change is?" "What's that?" 6 months ago, when something went wrong, everyone looked to the Valorians to fix it. They were the smart ones, the experienced ones, the ones with all the advanced technology. And now? Now, when something goes wrong, everyone looks to see what the humans are going to do about it. Rodriguez grinned, because they know that humans are too stupid to give up and too stubborn to leave anyone behind. Marcus laughed, recognizing the truth in his friend's assessment. Humans had earned their place in galactic society not through superior technology or advanced intelligence, but through the simple refusal to accept that some situations were impossible. "You're taking a new job, aren't you?" Rodriguez asked. "Yeah, I think I am. But I'm bringing our team with me." "Good. Someone needs to teach the rest of the galaxy how to be properly stubborn." As they walked back toward the main station areas, Marcus reflected on the events that had brought them to this point. 17 fractured bones, multiple equipment failures, flooded tunnels, and collapsing infrastructure. By any rational analysis, the Sector 7 incident should have been a disaster that proved humans weren't ready for the dangers of space mining. Instead, it had become the foundation for a new approach to emergency response that was being implemented across the galaxy. Not because humans had superior technology or advanced training, but because they had something that was harder to quantify and impossible to replicate. They had each other's backs. Marcus's comm device chimed with an incoming message from Earth. His sister's face appeared on the small screen, and Marcus could see his 2 nephews playing in the background. "Marcus, I saw the news about your promotion. The kids are so excited that their uncle is going to be running space emergencies." Marcus smiled at the simplified version of his new responsibilities. How are you doing, Elena? How are the boys? We're good. Really good. The money you've been sending has made such a difference. Tommy starts advanced math classes next semester, and Carlos joined the junior engineering program. They're going to be smarter than their uncle. They already are, but they want to come work in space when they're older. They say they want to help people the way Uncle Marcus does. Marcus felt a familiar mix of pride and responsibility. Everything he had done, everything he had risked, had been to give his family better opportunities. But now he realized that his work was also setting an example for the next generation of humans who would venture into space. Tell them they can visit me at the new job, Marcus said. I'll show them around the emergency response center. After ending the call, Marcus made his way to the observation deck where he could look out at the asteroid belt and the distant stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were exploring new systems, human workers were building new stations, and human families were starting new lives among the stars. They were no longer the newest or the most primitive species in galactic civilization. They were partners, colleagues, and friends to beings they had never dreamed of meeting. Marcus thought about the title of the report he would have to write about the Sector 7 incident, Exceptional Human Performance Under Extreme Conditions. It was a clinical, scientific description of what had happened during those desperate hours. But Marcus knew the real title would be different. The day humans proved that some things are more important than logic. They had stood tall when everything around them was falling apart, not because they were stronger or smarter or braver than anyone else, but because they simply refused to let each other down. And that, Marcus thought, was the most human thing of all.